Hello, and welcome to Book Summarist. On a bitterly cold morning at West Point, hundreds of young cadets stood at attention, bracing themselves for what lay ahead. They had made it past the academic and physical tests required to get into one of the most prestigious military academies in the world. But the real test was just beginning. Beast Barracks, a brutal 6-week initiation designed to push them to their absolute limits. It wasn't just about physical endurance. It was about mental toughness. Cadets who had once been top of their class, valedictorians, star athletes, students with perfect SAT scores, began to drop out. But those who remained weren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They were the ones who refused to quit. Angela Duckworth, a psychologist and former teacher, became obsessed with understanding why some people push through obstacles while others give up. What was the real secret behind extraordinary achievement? She studied everyone, from West Point cadets and spelling bee champions to top CEOs and elite athletes. Her discovery was simple, yet revolutionary. The biggest predictor of success wasn't talent, intelligence, or luck. It was grit. Effort counts twice. Why talent is overrated. From a young age, we're told that talent is the key to success. We admire child prodigies, gifted athletes, and geniuses who seem naturally exceptional. But Duckworth's research turned that idea upside down. She found that talent alone was a poor predictor of success. Instead, effort mattered far more, so much so that it counted twice. She breaks it down with a simple formula. Talent times effort equals skill. Skill times effort equals achievement. What does this mean? Even if someone is naturally talented, their abilities won't mean much unless they put in effort. And even after they develop a skill, they need even more effort to turn it into real achievement. Think about the world's best musicians, athletes, or entrepreneurs. People love to call them naturally gifted, but that overlooks the thousands of hours they've spent refining their craft. Take Rowdy Gaines, for example. He wasn't a natural-born swimming prodigy. In fact, he started swimming relatively late and was far from the fastest in his early years. But while others trained for a few hours, Rowdy spent countless hours refining his strokes, pushing himself past exhaustion. Years later, that relentless work ethic turned him into an Olympic gold medalist. His story proves Duckworth's point. Talent might open the door, but it's effort that carries you through it. Another famous example is Will Smith, who openly admits, "I've never viewed myself as particularly talented. Where I excel is ridiculous, sickening work ethic. You might have more talent than me, but if we get on a treadmill together, either you're getting off first, or I'm going to die on that treadmill." This mentality, the belief that effort is the great equalizer, is a key theme in grit. Talent alone won't make you great, but combine it with relentless effort, and you become unstoppable. Passion and perseverance, the two pillars of grit. Grit isn't just about working hard. It's about sticking with something for years, even when it gets difficult. Duckworth discovered that the most successful people have two things in common. Passion, a deep, long-term commitment to something meaningful. Perseverance, the ability to push through failures and obstacles without giving up. Many people mistake passion for excitement, thinking it's about feeling inspired every day. But real passion is deeper than that. It's the ability to stay committed to something even when the excitement wears off. Jeff Bezos is a perfect example. When he started Amazon, it wasn't the e-commerce giant we know today. In fact, the company barely survived in its early years. There were multiple moments when failure seemed inevitable, but Bezos didn't walk away. He believed in his vision, adapted, and pushed through failures. It wasn't talent that made Amazon succeed. It was his relentless perseverance over decades. Duckworth shares another example from the world of business. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Chase. Dimon was once fired from Citigroup, but instead of seeing it as a career-ending failure, he used it as fuel. Years later, he built JP Chase into one of the most powerful banks in the world. What separated him from others? He had the grit to keep going when others would have quit. But perseverance isn't just about career success. It applies to every part of life. One of the most striking examples Duckworth shares is about parents of children with severe disabilities. Many of them struggle with exhaustion, frustration, and an uphill battle for resources. And yet, over time, these parents develop an unshakable resilience. They don't quit because they are deeply connected to their purpose, giving their children the best possible life. The power of a growth mindset. Why grit can be developed. One of the most important ideas in grit is that perseverance isn't something you're born with, it's something you can develop. Duckworth's research aligns with the work of psychologist Carol Dweck, who introduced the concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset believes that abilities are innate. People with this mindset think, I'm either good at something or I'm not. When they fail, they assume they aren't talented enough and give up. A growth mindset, on the other hand, believes that abilities can be developed through effort and learning. These people see failure as part of the process and persist through challenges. Duckworth found that gritty individuals almost always have a growth mindset. They don't see obstacles as permanent roadblocks. Instead, they see them as challenges to overcome. Take the story of Thomas Edison, for example. He failed over 1,000 times before successfully inventing the light bulb. When asked about his failures, he famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That is the essence of grit. Even Michael Jordan, often regarded as the greatest basketball player of all time, was cut from his high school basketball team. Instead of giving up, he used it as motivation. He trained harder than anyone else, transformed his weaknesses into strengths, and went on to dominate the NBA. Duckworth argues that grit can be taught by embracing a growth mindset. If you believe that abilities can be developed, you're more likely to persist through struggles. And persistence, over time, leads to mastery. Grit in parenting, education, and leadership. One of the most powerful parts of grit is how its lessons apply beyond personal success. Duckworth emphasizes that grit isn't just for athletes, CEOs, or artists. It's something we can cultivate in children, students, and workplaces. Parents often want their children to be happy, but Duckworth argues that teaching perseverance is far more important than avoiding discomfort. She introduces the idea of the hard thing rule, which she uses in her own family. The rule is simple. Every family member must choose a hard thing, a sport, an instrument, a skill, and stick with it for a meaningful period. They can't quit just because it gets tough. This teaches children that struggle is normal and quitting isn't an option the moment things get difficult. She studied how parents raise resilient kids and found that the best parents combine high standards with strong support. They push their children to do hard things, but also provide encouragement along the way. Duckworth also examines how some of the best schools foster grit. One standout example is the KIPP, Knowledge is Power program. Charter schools, where students are taught that success isn't about being the smartest, it's about working the hardest. These schools emphasize character development alongside academics, training students to embrace challenges rather than avoid them. One of the school's mantras is, "Work hard, be nice." The idea is simple. Effort and perseverance matter more than natural ability. Great leaders don't just have vision, they have the endurance to see it through. Duckworth highlights how gritty companies create cultures of perseverance. One example she shares is about the Seattle Seahawks head coach, Pete Carroll, who builds teams around resilience rather than just talent. At his training camps, he constantly reinforces the idea of a compete culture, where players focus on getting better every single day, regardless of wins or losses. This relentless pursuit of improvement creates champions, not just athletes with raw talent. The same principle applies to business. Companies that survive economic downturns or market disruptions aren't always the biggest or the richest. They're the ones led by people who refuse to quit. The science behind grit. Why it's more important than IQ. One of the most groundbreaking revelations in grit is that grit is a better predictor of success than intelligence, IQ. For decades, intelligence was considered the gold standard of potential. Schools, workplaces, and even the military often used IQ as a primary indicator of future success. But Angela Duckworth's research shattered that belief. She found that raw intelligence alone wasn't enough. What really mattered was how long and how hard someone was willing to work. Duckworth's discovery came from studying a wide range of individuals, from West Point cadets to spelling bee champions, salespeople, and even corporate executives. She developed a grit scale, a simple 10-question test designed to measure how likely someone is to persist through challenges. What she found was stunning. At West Point, she discovered that cadets with the highest grit scores were the most likely to survive beast barracks, even if their academic scores, IQ and SATs, were lower than their peers. In the National Spelling Bee, she found that the kids who made it the farthest weren't necessarily the smartest. Instead, they were the ones who spent the most time preparing, repeating words for hours, practicing with flashcards, and staying up late to study. In sales, gritty salespeople consistently outperformed their peers, not because they were better at selling, but because they were willing to make more calls, face more rejection, and keep going when others gave up. In education, teachers with high grit scores were more likely to last in tough schools, where burnout rates were high. IQ might give someone a head start, but grit determines who crosses the finish line. How to build grit in your own life. The most important takeaway from grit is that success isn't about being naturally gifted. It's about long-term perseverance. Duckworth suggests 4 key ways to build grit. 1. Develop a deep interest. Find something meaningful to you and commit to it. Passion isn't about excitement. It's about dedication over time. 2. Practice relentlessly. Embrace the hard, boring work. Improvement happens when you deliberately push past your comfort zone. 3. Find a purpose bigger than yourself. The grittiest people see their work as serving a greater cause, whether it's helping others, creating something valuable, or solving an important problem. 4. Adopt a growth mindset. View challenges as learning opportunities. The best people don't avoid failure. They use it as fuel to get better. Grit isn't something you're born with. It's a muscle you build through effort, perseverance, and purpose. So, the next time you feel like quitting, ask yourself, do I really lack talent? Or do I just need more grit? Because in the end, talent might get you noticed, but grit is what makes you unstoppable. If you found grit inspiring, then you'll love the obstacle as the way. It's all about turning adversity into advantage, using timeless stoic wisdom to overcome challenges. In the next video, we'll dive into how history's greatest leaders and thinkers used obstacles as stepping stones to success, and how you can do the same. Stay tuned. See you in next video.